You have big dreams of losing weight and creating a healthy, joyful life. But you find yourself craving sugar, caught up in what the scale says, and diet hopping. Dieting is the old way of losing weight. And the good news is I'm going to give you a new way of eating so you can ditch diets for good and build a healthy relationship with real food. My name is Megan Olson, certified nutrition practitioner, creator of Skinny Fitalicious, and your host of the Dish on Diets show.
Hello friends, today we're talking about why you keep regaining weight. I talk to a lot of women in my free consultations and obviously women who work with me in my nutrition practice. And the common theme always is like, I lose weight, I did great on this diet, but then at some point I regained weight. So we're going to dive into this topic more today. I'm going to talk to you about 4 reasons why this specifically happens. And I think it's really important for you to do this deeper work. We're going to talk more about this in a second, but a lot of people don't do this work. They just know that they need to get on a diet. They just, they're like, I need to diet. I need to lose weight. They don't ever stop and think about like, why do I keep dieting and then regaining weight? Because the real goal is maintenance. The real goal is to lose weight and keep it off for a long period of time. Yeah, you might fluctuate 5-10 pounds, but to me, that's just basic maintenance. But if you're like gaining all of your weight back every time you come out of a diet, there's something going on there. It's to be investigated. It's trying to tell you something. And repeating this pattern is just the definition of insanity. I mean, I see a lot of people in my nutrition practice who they've done Weight Watchers for like 30 times. And I'm like, why do you just keep going back to Weight Watchers? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But anyways, we're gonna talk more about this in just a second. Before we kind of get into the details, I just want to remind you that I'm doing a cookbook giveaway. So my cookbook, I'm doing that giveaway, 1 cookbook a month from April 2024 through December 2024. Last month's winner for April of 2024 was At Me Up. Make sure you email me, megan@skinnyfitalicious.com, so that you can claim your prize. Also, make sure that if you want to be entered into the month of May, that you leave a 5-star rating and review of the podcast and Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is go to your Apple Podcast app, click on the Dish on Ditching Diets thumbnail, scroll to the bottom where you see the ratings and review, and leave your review and 5-star rating there for a chance to win my cookbook. And I really appreciate all of you who've been leaving reviews. They're so kind. I love reading through them. It's really been fun to read your reviews, and I do love gifting you, my cookbook. So, a fun story about my cookbook. It was actually released in 2020, and I was actually supposed to be on QVC promoting my cookbook in 2020. My publisher had set me up to do like a dry run with QVC in April of 2020, and then to do the live filming in May of 2020, but it never happened because, we all know what happened in 2020, right? It was such a buildup and then such a letdown because QVC never brought that cooking segment back onto their show after the pandemic. And it was really a bummer, especially since I put so much time and effort into writing this cookbook. It really was a lot of work, and I don't think a lot of people realize how much work cookbooks are. I'm not sure I would ever be game for doing it again. I mean, I never want to say never, but it's a lot of work. But anyways, I'm happy to gift it to you guys for listening to the show, and I hope you find some recipes to enjoy from it. But anyways, let's chat about why you keep regaining weight after coming out of a diet. There's 4 reasons I'm going to share with you. And like I said earlier, I speak to a lot of women every week, some who are my clients, some women in my free consultations, and women on social media who message me. And the common thing I hear over and over again from these women is, I did all these diets and I lost weight, but then at some point I regained the weight. So when you have a consultation with me, there's actually an online form that you fill out before having your consultation. And that form has a question that specifically says, tell me what diets you've done and what were the results. The question right after that says, why do you think you regained the weight? You know what the most frequent response is that I see? I don't know. I always find that response so curious, don't you? So, a lot of these women are telling me how they lost weight doing things like low carb, Atkins, Optavia, Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers 3 billion times, fasting, Whole30 keto, an 800 calorie diet, a doctor-led diet, a shake program, a meal replacement program. I mean, clearly a lot of women are pros at dieting and testing out a lot of diets these days. From my perspective, clearly none of these women have a weight loss problem. None of them. And if this is you, you don't have a weight loss problem. These women can lose weight. If you have lost weight many times and regained it several times, you don't have a weight loss problem. You can lose weight. You have a problem keeping it off. You have a problem regaining it. And I find that really, really curious. And I find it especially curious how many women come to me. They message me on social media or send me an email or have a consultation with me or just come work with me in my practice who don't realize that this is the real problem you actually need to solve for. Why do you keep regaining the weight back? And, when I have consultations for women or talk to women on email or social media, I will ask them why they think they regained the weight, and they will still say, I don't know. Or they'll say things like, I think it's sugar. It's sugar's fault. I just need to keep the sugar out of the house. Or my husband keeps bringing all this bad food in the house. If I could just learn to not eat what my husband brings in the house or never eat sugar again, I would be all set. Or it's my 3 p.m. snacking. If I could just figure out how to cut out my 3 p.m. snacking, or I don't exercise, if I could just figure out how to exercise and be motivated to exercise. I mean, these are the type of things that they will say to me. The truth is, none of these things are why you keep regaining weight. So if this is you, I want you to really stop the diet nonsense. Stop and reflect on why you keep regaining weight after you diet. Before you ever do another diet, ever do another program, I want you to self-reflect on why you keep regaining the weight. And there are 4 things I'm going to discuss with you today to help you figure this out. But here's an analogy I just want to give you. Imagine NFL football. If you are at an NFL football team, imagine you go into a game and at the end of the game you lose, right? And you go in the locker room and the coach is like, well, next time we're just going to do better. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that team is going to be very successful with that type of, reflection? Let's just do better. They're not actually digging into what were some of the mistakes. What are the things we need to correct? What are the things we need to do better? If you don't actually dig in and do that self-reflection, right, the football team is not going to do very well game after game with somebody just saying, you just need to do better, right? But that's kind of the mentality we have with diets. I'm just going to find another diet and I'm going to do better. No, we actually need to stop and self-reflect. If you keep finding yourself in this pattern of you lose weight, you follow a program, you get the results, it worked, quote unquote, but you can't keep it off long term, something's off. Something's going on, okay? So 4 things that we're going to discuss today. Number 1, this is probably not going to be a surprise to you, but it's doing a diet that's setting you up to fail from the beginning. So remember what I said earlier, the goal is not to lose weight. The real goal is to keep weight loss off long term. Yeah, you might fluctuate 5 to 10 pounds long term, but the real goal is to keep the majority of the weight off long term, to have long term sustainable weight loss, and to have sustainable habits, to have a good relationship with food and exercise, to have healthy habits, to be a stronger and fitter version of yourself, to have a better mindset, right? But what I see quite a few women doing are diets that are unsustainable, too extreme, and aren't teaching you about creating sustainable habits that support your health and help you get stronger longer term. A lot of women are eating in a way and exercising in a way that they cannot follow or do until they're 85 years old. a lot of women approach weight loss with this mindset that they just need to cut out all their favorite foods and do drastic things to manipulate that number on the scale. A lot of women are approaching weight loss with the mindset that they need to eat perfectly healthy foods 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if they screw up one day or one meal, they've ruined all their progress. A lot of women think this way, that they have to eat perfectly healthy day in, day out in order to lose weight. Whew, that's such a high bar to set. You can eat unhealthy and still lose body fat. And as a nutritionist, I hate to say that, but it is factually true. There's been a lot of studies on this. The Twinkie study is one example. A guy ate Twinkies in a calorie deficit and lost weight. You can Google that. His health markers improved too. Now, I'm certainly not saying you should, eat Twinkies all day long and not anything else. Everyone needs to work on adding more high quality foods to their diet, more fruits and vegetables, more fiber, more lean protein. But I do believe we kind of get into this mindset where we think if we ate pizza on a Friday night with our family, we messed up, or if we had ice cream or cookies, etc., that somehow we failed. We've demolished all of our progress. We're never going to reach our goals. We have like the story in our mind, like, oh my gosh, I wasn't perfect, so now I'm never going to reach my goal. And these mindsets are exactly why a lot of women regain weight, because it's just not sustainable to be perfect day in and day out until you're 85 years old. I mean, wow, like I could never live like that. That's so much pressure. So a lot of people, when they go into like weight loss and they approach weight loss, they restrict these quote unquote bad foods for so long, doing extreme diets or being on super low calorie diets, that once they come off these extreme diets, they overeat these quote unquote bad foods, right? Because you never healed your relationship with food. You never created a plan that was sustainable, that taught you how to eat all foods you enjoy without gaining weight and without throwing yourself under the bus, thinking that you somehow did something wrong by having pizza on a Friday night. So a lot of people end up doing unsustainable diets that they can't do until they're 85 years old, or they're just following a way of eating that they can't do until they're 85 years old. They're keeping a lot of foods out of their diet that they don't necessarily need to do to get good results. And they keep thinking there's no possible way that they can eat foods that they actually enjoy, that are satisfying, that are less nutritious, and still lose weight. So I just think that if you have had this problem with your weight and dieting and food for like 10, 20, 30, 40 or more years of your life, that you should really stop and think if maybe how you're approaching weight loss is what's causing your weight to come back. Are you setting yourself up to fail from the start by doing something too extreme, too unsustainable, or thinking that you have to be perfect all the time? This was something that in my own journey took me forever to realize. I just kept thinking if I could have the willpower long enough to stick with a diet that I could lose weight. But I never thought beyond like, I just got to lose weight. My focus was always, I got to lose weight. I got to lose weight. How do I lose weight? I never thought to myself like, how, if I do lose weight, how will I keep this weight off? I just assumed that if I lost weight, I could somehow go back to how I was eating and keep it off. Like it never dawned on me. And I don't know why I thought that, but that was my thinking until I just realized one day I had to change my habits. I had to work on gradually becoming somebody who is healthier and change my habits gradually over time. Not just like be someone who was a dieter, temporarily eating a certain way, who never changed their habits. And I think a lot of women I speak to, a lot of you, think the same way I did back then. You're so focused on the losing the weight part and the feeling better right now immediately about yourself part that you miss the bigger goal. And that's why you fall for like these quick fixes, these extreme protocols, unsustainable diets that yield short-term weight loss. I think a lot of people also like think that perfection is the way. And so that's why they fall more into this trap of like yo-yoing with their weight, because they try to be perfect, but then they can't be perfect and they fall off the proverbial wagon, and then it's really hard to get back on. So until you really accept that you have to change how you approach weight loss, you can't do extreme things anymore, and that the goal is just not to lose weight, it's to maintain weight loss. Until you accept these things, you're going to continue to fall for short-term fixes and be susceptible to regaining weight. And listen, there's no judgment. We've all grown up with diet culture, and as a result, we all have to come to think that it's normal to follow an extreme diet, to crash diet. But that's the old era of losing weight. We're in a new era, okay? What's not normal is for us to think about changing our habits. What's not normal is for us to think, how could I include my favorite foods and some more nutritious foods and still lose weight? What's not normal is for us to think, am I losing weight too quickly? Is this diet or way of eating going to be sustainable until I'm 85 years old? Am I losing too much muscle mass with this diet? It's not normal for any of us to think that way, so it makes sense why we get confused about why we keep regaining weight. But the thing I always say is, you can't build a house without a foundation, right? That is how most people approach weight loss, because that's what diet culture has taught everyone. You're trying to throw up the walls and the roof of the house, but you have no solid foundation. You have no sustainable habits or a sustainable way of eating. All you know is restriction or just overeating, like how you normally eat, right? Weight loss, or the calorie deficit part, is a lot easier when you have the foundational stuff in place first. I actually spoke to a woman recently in a consultation who told me she just wanted peace. She just wanted to stop thinking about weight loss so much. She wanted to stop having to think so hard about food, fearing food and worrying that every time she ate too many cookies, how she would have to restrict because she feared she would gain weight. I think this is what most of you want too. Peace around food and your weight, to free up your mental space. No keto, fasting, calories, low carb protocol, boot camp, supplement is going to do that for you. So ask yourself, if you've regained weight after losing weight, did the diets or programs you've done in the past set you up to fail from the beginning? Were they too extreme? Did they not include foods and meals that satisfied you? Were they unsustainable? Not something you could do until you're 85 years old? It's okay if it's not, but reflect and see. I think also just like thinking about like Weight Watchers, I know from a lot of clients, there's some bad mentality, probably not intentionally promoted by Weight Watchers, but it happens by their point system. Like people kind of freak out about eating the high point foods because they're like, it takes up a lot of my points. This sort of installs like a really negative behavior around certain foods that are higher in calories. So then people get scared of eating these foods and they tend to binge on these foods because they tend to restrict them. So we kind of have to look like an observer at some of these diets that you have done, and what have they been teaching you? Have they been normal? Have you been trying to be too perfect? Were they including things that satisfy you, not just things that fill you up, right? So you kind of have to step back and look at the bigger picture. And, I think sometimes it's really easy to get lost in the weeds, especially as a woman over 35. There's so much, I talked about this in my last podcast. There's so much misinformation on social media, so much marketing poised to women in perimenopause and menopause. And it starts to make you think like, the basic boring stuff doesn't work, but the basic boring stuff does work. It's just not super sexy. It's not super exciting, and it does take a long time. So people are always looking for shortcuts or looking for the magical solution. I had a consultation with another woman who was telling me, I just can't figure out why I gained all this weight back. I did this diet, and then 2 years later, I gained all this weight back. And then I said, oh, okay, well, what's going on with your eating? Are you tracking your food? Are there some things that you're noticing with your eating? And she's like, yeah, I overeat every night. I overeat sugar. And I'm like, that's really interesting. And she's like, yeah, I went to my doctor and I told my doctor I couldn't figure out why I kept gaining weight. And I said, do you think you're overeating at night and the binging on the sugar might have something to do with this? And she was like, oh, well, probably. I'm like, do you think the fact that you haven't been tracking your food or paying attention to portion sizes might be part of this? And she's like, well, probably. But I could also tell and sense that she was still in this mindset like, there's got to be something else. It can't be that stuff. It can't be the fact that I'm overeating and binging on sugar every night. No. I mean, it's fascinating to me when I talk to people and they don't even realize these things. Like, you're going to your doctor like there's some kind of mystery going on, right? And I'm not saying this to shame anybody. I'm just pointing it out because I think a lot of people do this. You have a little bit of a cognitive dissonance. You don't realize that, this is a thing that is actually preventing you from reaching your goals. It's a thing that's actually getting in the way. And I think always want to think that there's a different type of problem going on. Like, I should still be able to do this and get away with this and not have to do any of that stuff. It's like, well, probably not. So, I mean, just take an honest look at what's going on and what you're doing. And remember, there's never any judgment. You're probably your own worst critic. So put that aside and just put your thinking cap on. Do some brainstorming. Like, have the things that you've been doing been sustainable? If you want peace around food and you want to finally figure something out that works for you, that you can do until you're 85 years old, like I said, no extreme protocol like fasting and low carb and boot camps and supplements and low calorie diets, they're not going to solve that problem for you. Okay? Number 2, you haven't changed your identity and beliefs to become somebody who is healthy. Most of you are going to gloss over this one, but it's the most important one probably. You have been a dieter where you just eat and exercise a certain way for 6 weeks or 6 months, and then you go back to eating how you were eating before. You've just been a dieter. You have a different food plan and different habits for when you're dieting versus when you're not dieting. The thing is, permanent weight loss requires change. You have to upgrade your operating system. You can't have all these new healthy habits and still be the old version of you who thinks that this will probably fail. This is impossible. I'm too busy. This will take forever. I can eat anything I like. I can eat this way for now and go back to what I did before, stuff like that. You actually have to work on becoming somebody that is healthier. What are the habits, behaviors, and identity of someone who is healthier? What do they do? How do they act? How do they show up? Prioritize themselves, etc. Instead of envying that one person in your life who is fit and always feeling like a failure around them and comparing yourself, maybe ask them, how do you prioritize your health? How do you find time for the gym, for your steps, for meal prep? What easy meals do you go to? Ask. Be an investigator. Get curious. Right? At some point, they had to become somebody that was healthier. At some point, they were you. And no one just wakes up and is healthy. You have to work on this. But the thing is that your habits are kind of like the apps on your phone. And your identity and your beliefs are like your operating system on your phone. You have like all these apps on your phone. And you know how every once in a while your phone tells you got to upgrade the software? Well, if you don't run the upgrade, the apps stop working, right? Some apps just stop working if you don't upgrade your phone. This is no different with you and your weight loss journey. You got to upgrade your mindset with your beliefs and your identity. You just can't keep being this old version of yourself thinking, what a big fat failure you are, doing all these new habits. It's not going to work. Over time, you're going to stop doing your new habits because you haven't upgraded your operating system. Your identity is still wrapped up in the old version of you. I'm somebody who always fails. So, when you're inconsistent with your habits, if you still think that way, it's no surprise why. Because you still think that you're somebody who fails. And, the thing is that, especially for women, I think we often wrap our identity in how we look and our physical appearance. There's a lot of family pressure and societal pressure to look a certain way. That can be very hardwired and ingrained for decades. A lot of the clients I work with struggle initially with disconnecting their scale weight, saying something about them as a person. Someone might get on the scale and it impacts their mood for the entire day. It says something you don't want it to say, so you feel down because you put a lot of meaning into that number. This scale number says something about me as a person is what women often correlate it to. But the scale number doesn't. It just says something about your relationship to gravity in that moment. So I think sometimes recognizing, yes, I have a body, but it's not who I am as a person can be really helpful. And then recognizing this is the one body I get to live in, so I'm going to take care of it forever. If I had a car and I could only have one car or one home for the rest of my life, I would probably take care of that a little differently, knowing it was the only one I would ever get versus knowing I get to upgrade. If I shatter my phone, I can go out and get a new phone. But if I shatter my body, I really can't go out and get a new body, right? And, this is one reason why personally in my weight loss program, in my nutrition program, I don't like before and after weight loss pictures because one, a lot of people use those on social media and online, and they can be very easily manipulated for marketing. But also because oftentimes when our brains see something, it fills in the blanks. The picture is just the tip of the surface, but what we don't see is what's below the surface. When I see a before and after weight loss picture, especially when it's one that's of an extreme amount of weight loss, I think of the extreme protocols that person had to do to make that happen. Knowing what happens physiologically and what happens mentally, because when you are trying to lose weight as fast as possible, we have all the evidence in the world to suggest that it's just not sustainable. We have evidence, and I share this in my free weight loss class, that 95% of people who lose weight will gain it back, and 1/3 to 2/3 of those people will gain it back plus interest. So knowing that, it is sad to me, knowing the extremes people will go to when they are uncomfortable in their own skin. It's a very vulnerable position to be in. And I think there's a lot of companies and people and doctors and programs and diets that feed on that emotional vulnerability, that promote quick fixes and short-term solutions without that long-term sustainability in mind. The other part of this is the mental toll of having to do something that extreme. Extreme dieting or dieting for a long period of time has a psychological tax, and then gaining the weight back has a psychological tax. You start to create this story about yourself, because oftentimes when somebody is overweight, it's not the first diet they've tried or the first time they've tried to lose weight. So it's kind of reinforcing this internal identity, this internal story, this internal belief system they have about themselves that they just can't do this. They can't be successful, and now they're going to this extreme length to lose a significant amount of weight fast, but they've done it in a way that's extreme and unsustainable. So as the weight creeps back on, all that does is reinforces this internal belief and identity that I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not worthy, I can never lose weight and keep it off. Your brain is always going to try to pull you back into this identity, and your brain is always going to try to look for evidence to confirm this belief. We have an internal belief system that kind of runs the show. And if we don't upgrade that internal belief system and identity, you're always going to default back to the old version of you. So a lot of times a person will start on a path to improving their health, but without changing their internal belief system, their brain will always pull them back in the form of self-sabotage. And sometimes it's not necessarily self-sabotage, but more like what that person was doing was completely unsustainable and they couldn't keep doing it. They couldn't keep up with the extreme calorie deprivation, cutting out certain foods, and extreme exercising. As their internal operating system begins to see validation and evidence that they can't do this, then they start to act in accordance with that belief system. They stop working out, no surprise. They stop tracking their food. They stop eating quality foods. They stop paying attention to steps, stop eating protein, stop eating fiber. No surprise. You're just validating a cruddy old operating system. You actually have to change this operating system. You have to upgrade. You have to become somebody that is healthier, not just be a dieter, not just follow a diet. What are the habits and behaviors and identity of somebody who is healthier? What do? Do they never eat pizza or ice cream? How do they act? How do they show up and prioritize themselves? Instead of envying that one person in your life who is fit and always feeling like a failure and comparing yourself around them, maybe ask them, Ask them questions. How do they prioritize their health? How do they make time for exercise and the gym with kids? How do they meal prep? What are the easy meals they go to? I mean, real change comes not from just following a nutrition and exercise protocol or following a diet for a period of time, but actually changing your identities and beliefs to become that upgraded version of you, becoming someone who's healthier, becoming someone who's fitter, becoming someone who prioritizes putting high quality foods in their body and getting their steps, exercising, prioritizing self-care and sleep no matter what's going on in their life. I mean, if you're not upgrading your operating system and changing your identity and your beliefs, then this also may be why you keep regaining weight. You still have a story in your head about who you are, what your beliefs are, and you do these self-sabotaging things to validate your belief system and your identity. A lot of clients I work with are subconsciously doing this and don't even realize it. My client Terry, who was on the podcast in episode 113, talked about this, talked about parenting the toddler. If you haven't listened to her talk about this, you should go listen, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, you don't have an exit plan out of your diet. So you come out of a calorie deficit or you come out of some diet and you don't know how to do maintenance. You actually do need to bring calories up slightly coming out of a deficit. You can't stay there. And you have to have a plan and structure for managing that until you learn what maintenance looks like. A lot of women do come out of a diet and think the amount of food they were eating while in a calorie deficit, while dieting, is what they should be consuming in maintenance, but that's not true. That works until it doesn't, because our bodies are super smart and have this thing called adaptive thermogenesis. So let's say you go on a 1,500 calorie diet to lose weight. You lose weight and you keep eating 1,500 calories for 6 months, a year, 18 months. At some point, your body is going to make 1,500 calories your new maintenance. Now, anytime you start to eat above the 1,500 calories, your body will be in a surplus. And over time, you're going to see weight regain. So having an exit plan coming out of your diet and not just sitting at that calorie deficit forever is really important. And I know working with my clients that this is a foreign concept to all of them. Maintenance is usually the scariest for all of them, which is why I have them practice maintenance with me as part of my program. I mean, ask yourself, have any of the diets you've done previously taught you how to maintain or just to lose weight? Has Weight Watchers taught you how to exit their plan? Has Noom taught you how to maintain what you've lost and how to bring your calories up? Has Nutrisystem, Optavia, or whatever protocol you're doing taught you how to just do maintenance? I'm guessing not. I spoke with a woman recently who actually did Noom, and she said it worked. She lost weight, but then she plateaued, which a plateau means that your body has adapted. And then slowly over about 8 months, she said she gained the weight back, right? Because she never brought calories back to maintenance. It's really not known exactly how much time, a person's body adapts. So this is why I tell clients 8 to 12 weeks in a deficit, get out unless you have a lot of weight to lose. But, just don't sit at that low calorie number for too long, because your adaptive maintenance, that's something your body can do. So if your adaptive maintenance is lower, now you are kind of in a compromised position metabolically, making it very easy for you to eat over that number and gain weight back, because now you're in a calorie surplus from your body's perspective. And this client also told me she was really hungry all the time. Noom is notorious for putting people's calories too low. So you're hungry and now your body has adapted and putting you in this really vulnerable position metabolically. Unfortunately, there is metabolic impact to dieting too much, dieting too long, dieting too extreme. With The Biggest Loser, if you've ever seen that show, I actually talk about that in my free weight loss class. The link is in the show notes if you want to go watch it. There was a study done on the participants of The Biggest Loser that showed their resting metabolic rate declined up to 30%, which means that for the people who lost weight and gained some back, they burned up to 30% fewer calories than they had previously. This means they gained a much slower metabolism, making it harder to maintain their current body weight. And by the way, this is one of the best long-term studies we have to show the metabolic adaptations that take place with extreme dieting. Less food coming in, more energy going out with lots of exercise. Your body is going to want to down-regulate to keep you alive. Our body's number one priority is survival. It's not weight loss. Your body wants to survive. So if you don't have a lot of energy coming in, it makes sense why you wouldn't have a roaring metabolism, because you would die quicker. We're still dealing with this hard wiring from evolution. Even in this day and age, our bodies have this survival-based instinct. So if food was scarce, which it was at one time, it slows down metabolism to keep us alive. That's why certain systems shut down, which expend a lot of energy, like your immune system. A lot of people might find when they diet, or the more they diet, the more frequently they get sick. That's because with way less calories coming in, your body's going to preserve energy by shutting off systems or slowing those systems down that take a lot of energy, like the immune system or the female reproductive cycle or sex hormones, etc. A lot of women I see in my nutrition practice are in this scenario, and they believe it's perimenopause or something with their hormones. Generally, based on my observations, it is not. The clients I have seen in practice, it's been their history with chronic dieting that has impacted them metabolically, and not in a positive way, right? Because your body senses that it might not survive. I have a phrase: more diets, more problems. The goal is to be in maintenance the majority of the time, with a dieting phase here and there. For example, the last time I was in a dieting phase was over a year ago. And before that, it was 2 years ago. I mean, most women tell me they want to build muscle and lose fat. Well, you can't do those two things at the same time unless you're a total newbie to all of this. It just doesn't work that way. You can get great body composition results being in maintenance. A well-fueled body is required, though, with enough calories to build muscle. A body that is not well-fueled, that is under-fueled, in a calorie deficit, can maintain muscle with adequate protein and strength training, but you can't gain muscle in a deficit unless, again, you are a total newbie. But in any case, if the diets you did in the past have not taught you how to exit them and go back to maintenance, then this may be why you've regained the weight. You don't have an exit strategy. A lot of clients I see are really, really good at dieting. They are like, this could be like their full-time job, dieters, but they're really bad at maintaining their results. In fact, some clients, I see them have this really bad mindset where they think they should be losing weight in maintenance. It's just so incredibly fascinating that women are so accustomed to dieting that their brain is wired to look for weight loss, always look for weight loss. And I tell my clients, look, we need to practice maintenance as if we were dieting, but without expecting to see the scale go down, because maintenance is a victory. Maintenance is a success. This is where the importance of measuring habits and measuring consistency and feeling proud about how you show up to take care of your body is so incredibly important. You got to shift your mindset from thinking it's all about the scale to thinking it's all about habits, feeling stronger, getting stronger, feeling proud of yourself for how you show up and take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself feels good. Getting comfortable with maintenance and practicing it just like you do dieting is important, and it could be a reason why you've regained weight. Not having an exit strategy, or maybe having this mindset of always expecting weight loss even when you're in maintenance. Okay? Number 4 is not knowing how to deal with negative emotions. So hear me out. Diets don't fix emotions. Losing weight doesn't fix emotions. It doesn't fix how we deal and cope with life. But many clients I have seen are trying to fix themselves, fix their weight, and see the scale go down, thinking is somehow going to fix how they feel about themselves and how they feel about things. But it doesn't. Diets don't fix your life. They don't fix emotions. Food doesn't really help us cope with our emotions. Therapy does. Coping with negative emotions requires a different level of self-awareness that most individuals are either just too busy in their day-to-day lives to recognize as a problem, or sometimes they're just not aware it's a problem, or they're aware it's a problem and they don't know what to do about it. This is why some people regain weight though, right? They're really good following the protocol of the diet, working on their calorie deficit. They get out of the calorie deficit and they don't know how to deal with things. So I had a client like this many years ago. Super sweet lady. She did a great job, lost 25 pounds. And then her husband came home and it kind of just disrupted some things. He was off somewhere. I think he was like in the military or something. And he was not living with them, because he was out of the house working on an assignment. And then when he came home, for her, like it created a lot of stress. COVID was happening, which kind of, brought all of our lives to a screaming halt and changed a lot of things for many of us, right? So people were working from home. And so it was just super stressful for her. She started gaining weight back. She started binging on sugar. So this is a issue of not coping with negative emotions. It's not a diet problem. It's not a food problem. It's an inability to cope, inability to deal with stress, not having resiliency and good stress, mechanisms for dealing with stress, having good outlets. But this is why some people regain weight though. They've learned to deal with loneliness, boredom, resentment, anger, stress, or even lack of like self-purpose, not having hobbies. They learn to cope with these feelings, these negative feelings, by eating food or drinking alcohol. And sometimes parents have even taught us this as we grow up. Oh, you're having a bad day, sweetie? Here's some food. Go sit down and watch your favorite show and eat. Or maybe we have a headache or we feel sick and we have somehow, as we have grown up, we've learned to soothe that bad feeling with food. Some of us have been taught from a very young age to just use food or maybe use alcohol to feel better, except it doesn't actually make us feel better. It does in the moment, but it's short-lived. Long term, it does not make you feel better. And this ties into what I said in number 2 about your identity too. If your identity is somebody who's an emotional eater, saying I'm an emotional eater is a very fixed mindset. So then what you do when you have this very fixed mindset is you go out and validate this mindset, this identity and belief about yourself with your actions and behaviors. You won't prioritize walking, meal prepping, eating your protein if you think it's not going to matter because you're always going to fail and you're always emotionally eating. Shifting your identity to become an upgraded version of yourself needs to be part of this process, like I said before, and it's something a lot of people miss in their journey. They are doing the things, but they're not really changing. It's like what I mentioned with the apps and your phone. You can do the habits, you can have the apps, but you need to upgrade your operating system. Otherwise, the habits aren't going to work over time. So upgrading your operating system means you would say, I'm learning to become someone who doesn't use food to cope with emotions. I'm practicing experiencing my emotions. Statements like these show a growth mindset. It says, I can change. I can work on these things. I may not be exactly where I want to be yet, but I'm working on it. I can learn to feel my emotions without food. I can become an upgraded version of myself. Several of my clients I've worked with recognize they're eating for emotional reasons, but they're not really sure what to do about it. And they believe losing weight is somehow going to fix how they deal with negative emotions. Crazy thing is, dieting doesn't fix emotions. Food doesn't fix emotions. Keeping food out of the house doesn't fix emotions. But we always seem to go back to dieting or weight loss thinking that's the solution. I have to speak to some of my clients about going to therapy. My client, Karen, who was on this podcast a few years back, she talked about this and she talked about how tremendous it was helping her seeing a therapist while she saw me at the same time. It was really, really helpful and she was able to figure out a lot of things. But for some reason, women always kind of have this mindset, it seems like they want to fix themselves. And I don't know why this is, but I will say that a lot of women are pursuing dieting and weight loss for the wrong reasons. So they end up in this cycle of just like losing weight and regaining weight. And losing weight just means you're a smaller version of the body composition you have now. It doesn't fix you. And most likely, you don't need to be fixed. You're a great person. And I'm sure no one is going to stand at your funeral someday talking about your weight and all the diets you've done. They're going to talk about what a great person you are. I mean, I'm all about helping somebody get healthier, improving their body composition, getting stronger, feeling better about themselves. But I think some women have this mindset that dieting is going to fix them and how they deal with the stress of their lives, their jobs, their families, etc. But dieting doesn't fix that. A smaller body doesn't fix that. So for those of you who have lost weight and regained it, this is something for you to consider as you are doing your reflection, like on why you've done diets and regained weight. Are you using dieting as a way to fix yourself? Are you using food as a way to avoid negative feelings or to deal or cope with uncomfortable feelings? These are things I see women frequently doing. I've been doing this for 10 years, so you start to see a lot of the same patterns, a lot of the same people struggling with the same things over and over again. So anyways, I went over these 4 things today. These are the 4 big things that I see over and over again, reasons why people keep losing weight and regaining it. Now, your job is to dig into the why behind it. If this is a pattern you've noticed about yourself, dig into the why. It could be one of the things I talked about today. It could be a combination, or it could be all of the above, or maybe something else. But it's really important before you start thinking about, going into MyFitnessPal and tracking your calories or counting calories or doing another diet or another program. It's really, really important for you to figure out, first and foremost, why do you keep regaining weight? Figuring this out is going to figure out so much for you. I can't stress this enough. It's going to help you identify what do you really need to work on first. And most likely, it's not more dieting. It may not even be weight loss that you need to work on. It may be something else, like talking to a therapist. It may be working on creating your foundational habits. I call this working on the basics. It may be working on maintenance and building muscle. These are just a few examples of things you may need to work on instead of dieting and weight loss. Anyway, I hope this episode was helpful for you. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, you have to come check out my free weight loss class. It's the 5 steps to lasting weight loss, how hormones impact weight loss, and the truth about lasting weight loss without relying on willpower, workouts, or deprivation. Click the link in the show notes to watch that free class today. And if you are a woman over 35 with 20 to 50 or more pounds to lose, schedule a free weight loss breakthrough session with me after you watch that class. And let's talk about your 20 to 50 or more pound weight loss plan.